like to present you with volume 2 of Painting Figures Within Flowers. The other one seemed to be a very popular series, and I've continued my work obviously with figures as well. And I was very devious this summer. I brought Rosie 4 dresses for her birthday which suited her posing in the gardens for me and then me painting afterwards. Not only will we do the figures within flowers, we'll also look at different ways of painting flowers in the garden too, to add to that spice for you. So let's look at the materials we're going to use first of all. We're going to use acrylics and oils over acrylics for the first section, and then we'll move on to other materials such as acrylic inks and watercolours later on. To prepare the canvases, I've mixed an undercoat of dark acrylic. I'm going to put some gold leaf over some of this, and I'm going to put some texturing over some. I should start off probably with acrylics and then finish with the oils. You can use the brush just to pick up odd bits and fill in the gaps. That's if you want them filling in. Well, you can see in this case I've done the gold leafing around as I've shown you earlier and how to do it, drawn out the composition bit. But I mentioned about this difference in tones and also in colours. Now you see I'm also starting to paint the highlights in. But having said I'm only using a limited amount of paints as you've seen from the palette, let's do a whole entire finished painting just with those few colours and acrylics. Having taken a collection and plethora of photographs of Rosie in my lovely flower gardens here, I then took them and enhanced them and placed them and moved them around into other photographs such as these poppy fields I took when she wasn't even there. This gives me an idea of how to do other compositions. It's much quicker than actually drawing them out, and I can see the colours immediately. So another nice loose painting, starting in my loose style and gradually tightening up till I'm satisfied that it's tight enough. We don't need to use oil paints across this one, the acrylics have been taken far enough for that purpose. And whilst we're on acrylics, just for fun, now something completely different. Whilst in Vienna I got this shot of these Lipizzaner horses, wonderful beasts, and I thought what an ideal time to show you how to use acrylics as glazes and as body colour being the white, which is slightly more opaque. So if we use that even thinner and use just washes of colour over a dark canvas ground, we can get this lovely effect of luminosity, which I want to be very loose with. Just simply tinting the canvas, tinting the colours, and where I want something stronger, making the body colour a little thicker. And you can see here the lovely effect of light that we can get. Now it's time to return to the painting of Rosie with the gold leaves around, or the painting of Rosie with Lottie the Labrador. Textures, the thickness, the creaminess, the beautiful impasto effects we can get. And talking of textures, let's move on now to this next one where we've actually made a textured surface already, as Monet often did in many of his larger works. I did the drawing first and then built the texture up with a mixture of filler and PVA glue, as you may remember at the beginning of this film, and then I've repainted over the dark ground, except in some of the areas on the figure where it's slightly smoother and I want more detail at the end. Early afternoon effect. I don't want too bright a sunlight, just a slightly soft highlights of sunlight coming across her face, flesh and body, and making these plants and flowers just glow. So I'm adding warms and cools here delicately into the shadows, and then we'll put the highlights in and little bits of dark towards the end, just to gently bring out the reflected light and light coming through under the hat. It's a wonderful way to paint and doesn't use tubes and tubes of oil paint as you might think at first by doing the texturing. So I do hope you experiment with this and try it yourself. Doing computer enhancements and changing the composition on the computer is so quick and so easy. We can cut and paste shapes much more quickly than we can by drawing them. So why not? It's not cheating, it's another skill, it's another tool, and I can quickly manipulate things around to get what I want. Here's a sunset that I'm going to use because I've decided that I want to paint all the different times of day. We've done early mornings, we've done early mid-mornings, we've done middays, we've done mid-afternoons. Now let's at last do a sunrise. Well, continuing on the figures within flowers theme, and in volume 1, one of the favourites was the watercolour pencil that I did. And we're going to use the watercolour pencil for most of the drawing, and then some loose wash at the end. But before I even start any of that, I actually want to set up masking fluid on these flowers and little light areas here, and some of the light edges around there as well. that means that I can paint this very loosely later on and just work in that on detail. For the face, we need to work in a whole series of these different colours. You can see here the warmer colour under here, the greeny tints coming through, then the blues, and even some reflected light from the flowers, the yellows on the side there. So we'll start off with some fairly warm tint over here. I'm going to use a little bit of orange, and we're going to do just straightforward cross-hatching, so very gentle shading on here first of all, as we get the darks going on behind. Now let's come down to the arm. Now we've been working on the arm, as you can see, and the same thing has been happening. I've been working across with the coloured pencil and leaving the texture at first and then going across with the brush afterwards, which blends it out but still leaves a little bit of the paper. We're using a Waterford £140 knot paper, which gives a slight texturing. In this case I just wanted to show you what happens when you do use a more textured watercolour paper with these pencils, and it can be quite effective. If we need to go darker with any other colours, we can do the same thing. We can either use the pencil or we can use the brush, just as I'm doing now, look, with the water as well. And look at the very darks in the background and the flowers. And we're going to use our palette of standard watercolours. So back to standard watercolour techniques. So what we're going to do is be painting a little bit of wet into wet and then the darks over all of this. Start with the small round, and I'm going to use a little bit of aureolin yellow first of all, just with a very light yellow in here, all the way down there, with that blue-grey, and leave it rough at the edges. I'm going to make a little bit stronger green up here, just to drop a little bit of an indication of shadow up there, and through here, and then hopefully once we come to take off the masking fluid, this whole thing's going to make some sense. Right, now we need to remove the masking fluid. The paint should be dry enough now. So continuing the series of painting figures within flowers, now we're going to paint Rose's sister, Liz. What I want to show you this time is the loose way that we can work on the background more. These lovely plants and flowers here and large leaves. Of course we'll be doing the figure as well, showing you just how building up one shape to another can quite quickly give you a very complicated picture, or what appears to be very complicated, rather than having to worry about all of these little individual shapes, that we can just put one colour in the right positions and like a jigsaw it will just appear without having to panic or worry or plan too much ahead. as you can see, that was treated very, very loosely, and yet we can still see the leaf forms in it. Even with these just loose shapes, as if they're being painted in by putting pieces of a jigsaw together, you can see the leaf forms appearing. So, in a matter of just over an hour, we've painted this whole picture. An indication of these blue greens. Maybe even a little touch of pink. Not much, just a sort of bluey pink, grey. And then some chrome yellow into it. So it just deadens it a bit but gives it a more golden. We're going to go much lighter than that in just a moment, but not quite yet. What I'm trying to show you is that we're indicating, we're giving an impression, we don't have to do everything in great detail. We're looking for this beauty of colour and light and atmosphere. Now I'm adding some rose to pink, so some rose to white, which is giving me a much brighter pink just here. A fraction. That plant comes over there. Here we go. When we come back to a painting, having been away for a while, we can see things that are wrong, and immediately I can see a problem here with the drawing of the face. So I want to set that up straight away. Take a small brush and just get my oils going. The nose needs lengthening out a little bit. So building up the background colours and light and atmosphere, and then gradually over the top working the brighter colours up more and more, working from the mid-tones and then outwards into the darks and the lights. This method allows you to work on a complicated subject matter but actually achieve it quite simplistically, just by working up one colour next to another, by keeping all the colours going at once, and gradually, like a jigsaw, they'll all fit together as you see here. You are the one in charge. If you start loose, you can finish tight. You can finish as tightly as you want, as detailed as you want. You don't have to finish impressionistically like this. You can finish quite photographically if you wish to. Start with watercolour, and in this case I'm going to put a light pink on first and cover her entire face in that, and I can leave it at that because I want things to blend in. I'm going to work some colours over the top, all the way down. It's worse in a few little, all the way down. As I'm working on the vertical, it's not going to be quite so, you're going to have stuff trickling everywhere, but you haven't got to worry about it. And isn't it nice when you can paint where you haven't got to worry? But when I was painting that big figure one for you last time, it was showing you how we could work it up like a jigsaw, how if we put the right colours in the right places. Now this here, look, I put a bit of pastel, how we can blend that just like the watercolour. I could take it off from there, I could move it to somewhere else. You know, you can use it just like watercolour. People don't realise you can do that. Now, the more expensive the pastel, usually the softer it is. So the unisons are fairly expensive, they're about each expensive. But now, even at that, you know, don't overdo it, keep it down. But I'm not worried about the trickles, and you'll see why, because I can bring it all back again. Now some of the stronger blues. They have their own names. This is a Rowley blue. I'd probably call it more an ultramarine myself. But as to how wet the paper is, as to what sort of a blob you're going to get with bits like that. Just approximating where leaves and things are, and gradually bring them out later. And if I want a leaf, I can just go dark around it like that and know approximately where it is there. And I'm trying to work it out as I go along. So my opinion here on this would be that, you know, the danger will be to go into here and keep working pastel and totally use it. It might still work, I'm not saying it wouldn't, but the idea is to let the colours flow through. Right. Now, we were talking about the vibrance. This is where the fun comes in. How we can really lay these colours on. So I bought the wrong set really. I bought a brand new set and forgot my cheapy ones amongst them. But if I want to come back into this, start putting in these flowers, you see, you can really now make things sing. You can come back and start putting in the details, picking things out like these. You can work light over dark, dark over light. There's no. And I'm still working very loosely. I'm not going to tighten up yet. You just indicate them and gradually build up, bit by bit, all over. Try and keep the whole painting going at once if you can. If we work like that, the colours should be correct one to another. If we just finish one particular part, you can find that it's wrong when you go to paint the resting. So try and keep the whole painting going if you can. Come to my darkest of my lights at the end. I tend to work out from my mid-tones and all my final coats, yeah? Going to come back for that? See you again? Yes. Very good. Any more questions for me? I'll do you some. Are you going to have a go then? I'll cut you some board and you just sit there and do the same thing. mix of wet into wet, almost kiddie abstract painting. But as I gradually work into that, I'll pull it out. A few colours like that can make such a difference, yeah? I mean, I could go on and with a few strokes I'll almost have this done. Loose and then tighten. Establish some of those darks. Back and find these colours, gradually build them up. It's time to get rid of the rest of the whites and establish some of the poppies colours. Let's get these reds on and just get rid of very loosely. And we'll gradually work up into it with this painting. Lots of little strokes of this light green going across.